Welcome back to Cause 3D, and we're on part 3 of our Vader build revamp. And today we're going to focus on the chest box. Now this chest box is one that I built years ago, and it's time to give this an upgrade. So let's move over to Workbench and go from there. Okay, so I've got my old chest box here, and let's go over some quick parts of this. This was all scratch built. So, while I hate to get rid of it, it's time to upgrade it. It did have electronics in it, lights and so forth, but overall this was made from the speaker components at one point, and some washers and some switches that are in here. That's actually what controlled the on-off switches. But we're going to replace them with these 3D printed parts as far as the switches go. And then as you can see, the rest of the stuff that's down here, it's all just going to get redone, the whole thing. Now I will say that when you have a metal piece on any prop, it just looks so much better than, let's say, a 3D printed piece. And yes, you can make your 3D parts look like they're metallic. On the parts that are here on the sides, I 3D printed one in plastic, and I was very disappointed with how it came out. The detail's just not there. So I turned around and 3D printed one in resin, which is closer, but it's still not where I want to get it. So what I did was I went over to the metal lathe and actually fabricated two out of metal themselves. But then why stop there, right? So realizing that these particular parts that attach to the metal rods, then they're not going to look right. So I went back over to the mill, and I might not have these in the correct spot at the moment, but you'll get the gist. So I fabricated those out of brass. So I am not a metal worker by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not a machinist, but I can somewhat proficiently run a lathe. I'll throw some footage in there for you so you can see what I did. As I said, when you actually have metal parts on a prop, it really makes them pop. So now where I'm sitting is I've got to refinish these bottom switches. We need to sand them down and get these switches painted that all fit into these areas. And then of course we've got to get our buttons and the coin slots. So I am going to move over to the sanding station, and we're going to get started on sanding and filling this, getting all the print lines out. The file that I'm using I found online. I will have to ask for permission from the designer before I can post anything. So I'm pretty happy with it. But let's get over to the sanding station and start. are almost done. Everything looks correct and is pretty aesthetically pleasing. It turned out really well. The only thing I have left is I do need to add in some electronics. And there is a back panel that comes with this particular file. Again, I will try to link that in the description, or at least point you in the right direction. I've got it screwed on to the body, and I do need to run some wires and some electronics in this. But we are getting close on this part of the build. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for joining us for this part 3 chest box for the Vader build that I'm restoring for my personal collection, and over the moon with how it turned out. I did make it a little more complicated by adding in some metal parts, but as I said earlier, when you add realism to a 3D printed prop, it really makes it pop. So I've got my leather straps on here at this point. I just bought some leather strapping from Amazon. I'll link that in the description as well. And I threw on some Velcro. So I want to thank you guys again for joining me today to finish up this build, and we'll start on the next part, which is probably going to be some cape, chest armor, and some of the soft good parts of him. But I am getting really close to finishing this, and I cannot wait to get this thing out of my shop, back into my collection where it belongs. But thanks for joining us today. Make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button. We can't do these without you guys, and we appreciate all the support that we get through that. So we'll see you in the next video.